Wow. Wow.
That's kind of a, I don't know, that kind
And you're not just, I don't think I'm getting across the logic of it.
Welcome to the Postgame. Thank you to the incredible DJ Danarchy. Thank you, super producer Matt Leck, chief economist David Griscom, super producer David Slavic, and each and every one of you. We are at it. Got a lot to get to. Bunch of sound, bunch of clips, some praise and blame to go around. We've got a gulag, which what I like about tonight's gulag segment is it would be used if the nutcases who happen to be the White House Chief Counsel of Economic Advisors who were writing that report were familiar with this show, they would use the gulag segment as part of their case for not giving every man, woman, and child in this country health care, which is essentially what the concern trolling piece about socialism was released by, well, of course, the economist for a white nationalist authoritarian government.
The Council of Economic Advisors.
Right. The Council of Economic Advisors.
A group of vulture morons.
Vulture. I wonder how coked up Kudlow was when he was writing that thing. Maybe not at all. I'm just asking questions. Or is it more, is Kudlow clean or is it more drinky? He might be more drinky now. More drink than sniff. Remember when he had his heart attack? And it was like a day after he was like on TV, but like, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of things going on in this Trump market.
It's weird because
I was like, yeah, how's that recovery going, buddy?
that was an interesting moment because that was the first time where we were making jokes about somebody that looked like they were maybe at the end of their wick, and it turned out to be definitely true. Like within a few hours. And now he's back on it. Like he looks the exact same. He's exhibiting the same symptoms.
Well, yeah, and also there was some questions in Alex Jones mode of like, was that a heart attack or was that a drinky me likey attack?
Hard Brexit? Sorry, did you say hard Brexit? I don't know.
Oh God! All right, let's get to it. We're gonna have to end a little bit earlier than usual tonight, folks. And I have taken from Sam the same habit of going a little bit overboard in terms of length of the second half of the show, especially on this one, because the main show's usually, a minimum like hour and 40 minutes. Sometimes we ride right up to 2
hours.
Most of the time 2 hours, yeah. Because it's a more integrated show in terms of like the sort of fun banter and the structured segments in the interview. It's sort of supposed to be synthesized in a different way. Okay, let's start with some fun. Let's have a little palate cleanser. Bernie Sanders is awesome. He's campaigning for Randy Bryce, who's a great candidate.
I would love to be there to vote for Bryce in Milwaukee.
It would be a pleasure to vote for Randy Bryce. It would be a pleasure to vote to get rid of Scott Walker. And I would love the idea of voting.
Well, he's not running against Walker.
No, but I'm saying if I was voting in Wisconsin to vote, okay.
Yeah.
The Democrat isn't great, so I would count that as a vote. I would, of course, obviously vote for the Democrat, and I would say that is a vote against Scott Walker. And then I would vote for Randy Bryce, whom I like and think is a decent candidate. And I love the idea of an actual working person who's committed to labor and a wide set of justice issues to replace Munster.
A guy who Paul Ryan's
Ryan.
donors aren't going to be comfortable in a meeting with, even if they wanted to get a meeting with him.
Yeah, exactly.
And a guy who's bringing the mustache back, which is very important.
Iron Stash. That's how he built his brand. And here is Bernie Sanders. I love this clip. It speaks for itself. But, man, come on, Bernie, run.
And when we talk about an economy that works for everybody, we understand that if you work 40 hours a week in the United States of America, you should not be living in poverty. Yesterday I talked to a single mom. Single mom worked for 7 years in Iowa for $7.25 an hour. She's now up to $8 an hour. That's nonsense. That's absurd. That's bullshit. We are going to raise the minimum wage for a living wage, $15 an hour.
Yes. This guy's great. Can we just play the that's bullshit part again? I love, but just that it's so basic, and the moral clarity of it, the urgency of it, the obviousness of it. Like, how disgusting, how despicable, how stupid do you have to be to disagree with that?
7 years in Iowa for 7.25 an hour. She's now up to $8 an hour. That's nonsense. That's absurd. That's bullshit. We are going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15.
Beautiful.
What I like about it is the crowd. If Trump said that, whenever Trump swears, it's an immediate roar, right?
Right.
They waited for him to tie we're going to raise the minimum wage. It's bullshit, and we're going to do this thing that basically redistributes wealth.
Exactly. That's great. You're calling from a 925 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? 925. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael, it's the Monaco.
Hey, how you doing? It's good to hear from you.
I'm pretty good, buddy. Long time I haven't called in. It's getting closer to the election. I've been busy as shit.
Glad to hear from
Researching these Republicans. It is what it is, though.
So
I was calling in because I was very inspired by a conversation about Brazil and just all the layers of global oligarchy that goes into seemingly just domestic political issues.
Yep.
And actually wanted to call in to talk a bit about Khashoggi.
Okay, we have to sell us because actually we have two Khashoggi videos we actually have to get to. So yeah, go ahead, man. Lay it on me.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right. So actually, I'm not going to talk about Jamal Khashoggi yet. First, let's talk about Adnan Khashoggi. So Adnan Khashoggi is the uncle of Jamal Khashoggi, who is one of the world's most notorious and biggest arms dealers on the planet. This guy was involved with every shitty thing you could possibly involve with all through the Cold War, including the Iran-Contra scandal, where he was the primary mediator between the hostage for arms situation that was going on at one point. He's a very delightful gentleman.
That guy is his uncle? I didn't know that.
Yeah, Adnan Khashoggi. Yep. They're actually, interestingly enough, Turks themselves, which is why the Khashoggi family has multiple times in its history, when it's fallen out with the Saudis or fallen out with anybody, like most Arab dissidents, flee to Istanbul, which is how Jamal Khashoggi found himself there in the first place recently. He was actually, in his youth, involved with Muslim Brotherhood and a lot of different political organizations and movements, and later on transitioned to more progressive, I guess you could say, political position as the political situation changed. I mean, he himself, Jamal Khashoggi, has been both a CIA asset and within the Saudi intelligence ministry. When he was back when it was Turki Al Faisal, who was the ambassador to London, he was doing work for him, and he's had a very interesting, diverse, crazy, fucked up life. But most recently, what I wanted to bring in, I've noticed in all the different media that I've been reading about this whole Khashoggi affair, it's been painted entirely as this MBS is a bad guy, this guy was a dissident, and he killed him because he said bad things about MBS. But there's so much more, geopolitical background, there's so much more historical relevance to the killing of this guy and the stuff that he was even currently doing. So the guy, he was in Istanbul, and I don't know if you've heard mentioned, but his fiancée that he was there to get permission to get married to in the consulate, the whole reason he was there, was waiting outside for him, and he never came out.
Yep.
So imagine
for sure.
getting ready to marry. Now, he was getting married there because he'd been living there because he's forming a new, quote-unquote, progressive Islamic organization, and he was fundraising in Istanbul because that's where you can get Qatari and Turkish money for such projects where you are marrying the Muslim Brotherhood and the Arab left that has fled a lot of these war zones in the Middle East together, who are all living in the Fatih district of Istanbul. So he was there actually fundraising, and in the midst of this fundraising project, where he was fundraising money from exactly Saudi Arabia's primary rivals right now, is when suddenly they kill him. And I just thought it was very interesting that this is totally absent.
You're talking about the Qataris. You're talking about raising money from the Qataris,
yes.
Right? So
from the Qataris and the Turks, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw back to you in a second because I do want to talk about Erdogan's strategy with regards to Saudi Arabia, excuse me. But yes, and some people, I just want to say, some people have been sort of pointing out that yes, there is this kind of lazy media narrative, and Jamal Khashoggi was a more complicated figure, so on and so forth, and there's bigger things to talk about. At the same time, obviously, what happened to him, and I know you agree with this, was horrifying and obscene and utterly unacceptable, and no family relation or political orientation or anything could justify it, obviously. So my read of this is that, yeah, Jamal Khashoggi, not only was he raising money from the Qataris, but I think he also still had some relatively friendly relations with other members of the Saudi royal family, which MBS has been, for a couple years now, ruthlessly sidelining. Like, in some ways, it's extraordinary the way he's sort of moved to consolidate power in the kingdom. But also, in addition to that, MBS has a mentor who is the prince of the Emirates, whose name of Abu Dhabi, whose name is actually escaping me at the moment. And this prince, who's sort of mentoring MBS, and they share a very similar aggressive stance against Iran. They're obviously joint together in the mass murder of Yemen, and they co-impose the blockade on Qatar, probably with the acknowledgement and the support from Trump and Kushner. And Erdogan has very bad relations with the Emirates. It's not as hot between him and Saudi Arabia as it is with the Emirates, but he perceives MBS as too pro-Emirate, and he wants a different Saudi configuration. And what it means inside Saudi Arabia, though, is certainly, while like the Emirates, we're still talking about absolute monarchies run on indentured servitude and ruthless labor exploitation and abuse. But on the other hand, to be real, I mean, definitely the Emirates are, relatively speaking, way more open in terms of, social life and women's rights and things like that. So that's the tradition that MBS is in. And just to kind of complete the circle, I think, yes, there's all these other complexities and things going on. And I think there's also no doubt that MBS ordered this, and some of it did have something to do with Jamal Khashoggi not only saying things about him that he didn't like, but actually precisely because he is who he is, and he was close to the Saudis. And that's quite a message to send. Like, forget a dissident. How about a guy who does a couple of mildly critical hits of me on Al Jazeera and writes a Washington Post column and talks to Tom Friedman? I will fucking torture and murder him in a consulate. I mean, that is a pretty horrifying message, and MBS actually has a history of sending messages like that.
Not only that, but he had his top aide, a guy named Qahtari, Skype in and talk shit to him the whole time he was being chopped to pieces as he was injected with a paralysis thing.
I haven't heard that.
They injected him with something to paralyze him, according to the Turks.
I heard that part. I didn't hear about the Skype call. Yeah.
Yeah, and this guy Qahtari apparently was Skyped in, and now the Saudis are dropping everything on this guy because they know that the evidence is there. So now they've blamed this Qahtari guy, and they're leveling everything, like just dropping on his head. And MBS has now also come out and been like, I had no idea he was doing this.
Right, sure.
As if anybody believes something like that. But no, you're 100% right. Also, another interesting thing is, like, just again to bring into like this concept of like global oligarchy and how like the politics, particularly in the Middle East, is almost entirely moved by these particular people. I mean, there is no really prominent or really effective working class movements or anything like that in the Middle East. And that has a lot to do with the material conditions there, and also the fact the U.S. has repeatedly helped decimate all working class movements in the Middle East.
There's a parallel between the United States and Middle East there, through gutting working class movements and rights, and having, obviously it's more extreme there, but there's a parallel. You gut the left, you have oligarchic states, and then the outlet for any type of sort of popular organization or even just like psychic relief is religious fanaticism, who governs in partnership with the oligarchies. There's a lot of parallels.
Absolutely. And also, like I was saying, this when MBS first came onto the scene and he was promising all this reform business, and I'm going to reform, we're going to embrace a less fanatic version of Wahhabism, he was making direct overtures to Jamal Khashoggi and his branch of the Saudi government, which was calling for Saudi Arabia to return to pre-1979 style Saudi Arabia. Now, this is complete bullshit. They have been for like over a year now, repeatedly contacting Jamal Khashoggi in Turkey and having him come in and meet with them and begging him to come back and saying they're going to give him a high post in the government and he wants to be a part of the Reformation because he's a reformer. And this guy knew, of course, he's like, this is completely bullshit, because I think they were doing exactly what the Iranians did after they thwarted the communists and they had the Islamic Revolution in Iran. They made a bunch of promises to international Iranian leftist dissidents who had fled the Shah and were living abroad and organizing and helping the communists within Iran to revolt. And they told them all, oh, come back to Iran, the revolution is done, the Shah is gone, and we need your help. We want the bright lights of the Iranian youth to return and help us govern this country. Of course, as soon as they returned, tens of thousands of people were hanged. Everybody who returned was hanged.
Yep, absolutely. There was definitely a very serious war against the left in Iran as well. Yep.
The same thing this guy was doing, he invited them all back, and then immediately afterwards, like 2-3 months after he announced that thing, and all these people returned to Saudi Arabia, they were immediately swept up in those mass arrests where he was arresting his cousins and whoever. Yep. He was arresting all the branches that were affiliated with this branch. But either way, it just demonstrates how fucked the situation is there. Because if you look at it, it's like from our perspective, we're sitting here deliberating and arguing with each other how we're going to build our coalition into something that could take power in this country. But the thing is, there is an actual coalition to be built. We're arguing about how we're going to do it and what's the path to get there. But there is something to be done. But if you're in Saudi Arabia, what labor? What are you supposed to possibly take the intelligentsia, people like Jamal Khashoggi, who are maybe an educated class of, quote unquote, enlightened people, who are they supposed to possibly organize with within the society to do anything? Mind you, there's not even elections. Right, but let's say even if there was, even if you got them to do the reforms to establish a parliament or something of the sort, you literally don't even have the societal mechanisms or even the material condition to even mount anything resembling left. So what happens there is always, especially with how heavy-handed the governments are, all the dissidents have to flee different places, and they all hide in places like Istanbul, and everybody mixes up, and the Libyans marry with the Syrians, and marry with the Turks, and marry with whoever, and they get concentrated in these neighborhoods, and then they build these organizations that can only be internationalist and violent by the very nature of the material conditions available to them for revolution. So it turns into this religious thing because they're not necessarily the same nationality, and so they end up with trying to build a common bond, and it just repeats and
that's going to be Islam.
We end up with the same exact situation.
Not because of some totally magical innate property, but because of the political context. I appreciate the call, man. I hope
it's
you're
literally the
soon.
Material conditions. Have a good night, buddy.
Thanks, brother.
Peace.
Yeah,
it's a strong call.
That was a very, very strong call. Going out very strong, pretty strong out of the gate. Pretty strong out of the gate.
Taking the rest of the night off.
I will tell you. Yeah, that was. We could co-host a Middle East politics show together. All right, let's do this. First, this is a report from CNN. This is another element. President Erdogan gave an address to the Turkish parliament where he outlined all of the steps of what happened to Jamal Khashoggi, including the hit team arriving from Saudi Arabia in Istanbul, them entering CCTV footage of them entering the Saudi consulate, documenting the calls in between the team and MBS's office, and so on and so forth. This is another very bizarre detail, but it does look visually plausible. And the Turks are claiming this is what happened. But a member of the Saudi hit squad leaving the embassy, leaving the consulate dressed in Jamal Khashoggi's clothes and walking around Istanbul in an attempt to sort of misdirect the investigation. This is a CNN report on that.
For Jamal Khashoggi, and that's the idea. These are the last known images of Khashoggi alive, moments before he entered the Saudi consulate. Take a look. Same clothes, same glasses and beard, similar age and physique, everything except the shoes. But a senior Turkish official tells CNN that the man on the left is a body double, one of 15 Saudi operatives sent to kill Khashoggi and then cover it up. His name is Mustafa al-Madani. Surveillance cameras capture him arriving at the consulate in a plaid shirt and jeans at 11:03 with an accomplice. 2 hours later, Khashoggi arrives. He was killed inside shortly afterwards.
Jesus Christ. And obviously it's not by any means an exact resemblance, but you don't need, they're just trying to throw different points of distraction. And they clearly thought they were going to get away with this. And this brings two things to mind before we play our next clip. One, part of the reason they thought they would get away with this is because there's no indication ever that Donald Trump would be upset by something like this. He's repeatedly called journalists the enemy of the people, and it seems as if the only Muslim that these thugs in the White House like is the thug prince of Saudi Arabia.
Since Khashoggi went missing, Trump decided to boost Greg Gianforte.
Exactly. Yeah, that should be not a surprise to anyone. He's, of course, the Republican oligarch congressman who body slammed a reporter. And, but you know what? It does seem with all of the information being released and just the utter, I mean, the Saudis first, they said that he wasn't there. Then they said he was accidentally killed in a fist fight. Now, of course, they're saying he was murdered, but of course, nobody in the intelligence services, senior leadership, obviously not the prince, nobody that a random hit squad.
There's some bad apples.
There's some bad apples. And sometimes those bad apples take a chartered flight from Saudi Arabia to Istanbul in the middle of the night, call the Crown Prince's office and just murder and torture a guy.
And sometimes the bad apples forward me his fingers for a trophy.
Yeah, exactly. And but you could tell Donald Trump, I finally do believe he's getting fed up with the Saudis, because this clip, when he says that what happened was really bad and it was tough stuff and Greg Gianforte is great, I find his concern for this horrifying story suspect. But when he says this shit, I believe it.
Mr. President, why do you think something like this could have happened? Do you think that there was a failure of leadership on the world stage, that Saudi Arabia wasn't concerned about?
They had a very bad original concept. It was carried out poorly, and the cover-up was one of the worst in the history of cover-ups. It's very simple. Bad deal, should have never been thought of. Somebody really messed up.
The execution
was the worst cover-up ever. And where it should have stopped is at the deal standpoint, where they thought about it. Because whoever thought of that idea, I think, is in big trouble. And they should be in big trouble. Okay?
He's so pissed at how bad the cover-up was. I've been spending time with members of some of the most reputable organized crime organizations my entire life. No one would have done anything this amateur. I thought this was a talented, promising kid. Now I'm having second thoughts.
The problem was in the ideation stage.
The problem was in the ideation. Something like this, what you do is you fake a car accident. Maybe you have someone shoot him out of his house. But the idea of taking him into the consulate, you're in Istanbul, okay? The agents.
What the fuck is this body double bullshit?
What the fuck is this body double? They don't even have the same. They don't even look the same. It's ridiculous.
At least wear the fucking shoes.
At least wear the fucking shoes. Meanwhile, you could have shot the guy in the street. No one would have known. You could have pretended he was being mugged or something. Or a car could have hit him. Accidents happen every day. But somehow at the ideation stage, we're going to cut him up in the consulate? I mean, this is just stupid. And then amateur hour only increases with the worst cover-up in human history.
And that's really what I'm upset about here.
And by the way, that's really what I'm upset about here, because sometimes we make a bad hit. Sometimes our emotions get the better of us. Obviously, he was very upset because of all the horrible things that this awful man was saying. He was being very disrespectful to the prince and his leadership, and it was a tough situation. So sometimes bad ideation happens. But if you're going to have those ideas and you're going to take risks, you're going to need to have a plan. And they had no plan. And it was sad, and as Mike said, that's what I'm really upset about.
That is,
it's not the crime; it's the cover-up.
I mean, the Khashoggi thing has really let the mask slip entirely, right? Because the first thing was, yeah, I know, but arms deals, guys. Come on, let's get serious.
Right, yeah.
But this is even. I mean, I'm gonna play it again. It's only 40 seconds.
Really.
This is,
and we'll try to keep our cackling to a minimum, because this is actually like. Could you imagine? For a second though. I have to indulge this. Imagine it wouldn't be like this, obviously, but it would be like, President Obama, you've suggested that we should negotiate with Iran, even as they continue to hang dissidents. I know. And why are they doing it so publicly? I mean, look, I understand you still got to clip some people who speak out against the Ayatollah because it undermines authority. But you got to have a big goddamn fucking Iranian National Geographic crew to document the whole goddamn thing right when we're trying to negotiate, and we know that the motherfucking Jews are trying to destroy it? What the fuck?
Whatever happened to a good old disappearance?
Yeah. Hey, did you see Hasham? No one's seen him for a couple days. Where is he? I don't know. Everybody knows where he is, in a ditch somewhere, but you can't prove it. But you guys got to do a bunch of goddamn photo spreads, undermine the whole negotiation. It's fucking amateur hour.
Mr. President, why do you think something like this could have happened? Do you think that there was a failure of leadership on the world stage, that Saudi Arabia wasn't?
Oh, there sure was.
Wait, are you blaming me because, bitch?
Yeah. Excuse me, bitch. I would never. Yes, I like when he gets into old Queen mode. Like, I might have been involved in some pretty elaborate cover-ups in my day.
If my arms weren't already folded, I'd be folding them.
Yeah,
right
I'd be folding them right now. I worked with Nicky Scarfo from the Philly Mob, and there are stories that you don't even know about. So it's very rude to say that I would ever participate in something as incompetent as this. But you go ahead, lying press. Aren't the press the enemies of the people? I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about the cover-up of the dismemberment and murder of a journalist, to say that journalists are some of the most dishonest, dangerous people, and so unfair. And this is the kind of anger that my friend the young prince had, which led to the bad ideation, which led to this disastrous cover-up.
Hopefully you don't have to go to any American consulates anytime soon.
Do you have any paperwork that maybe you need to renew? Maybe a passport's out of date or anything?
Do you think that there was a failure of leadership on the world stage, that Saudi Arabia wasn't concerned about?
They had a very bad original concept. It was carried out poorly, and the cover-up was one of the worst in the history of cover-ups. It's very simple. Bad deal. Should have never been thought of.
Deal.
Somebody really messed up. And they had the worst cover-up ever.
Oh my God.
And where it should have stopped is at the deal standpoint, where they thought about it. Because whoever thought of that idea, I think, is in big trouble. And they should be in big trouble.
By the way, he means the person who MBS is going to say whose idea it was, who's about to get publicly beheaded. Whoever it was that ideated that to the prince is in big trouble.
That is that bad original concept. Yeah. Don't do original concept like that again.
Terrible original concept. Terrible from a deal standpoint.
That's like a fucking Oscar category.
It's only at the last second that he even shows any kind of sympathy for the fact that somebody was murdered. He should be in trouble.
I also like that deal thing. But I like that. It's just like, I mean, it was a good deal for the prince. It was a good deal for the hit team. Maybe not a good deal for the consulate. And obviously the negotiation did not go the way the dismembered murderer journalist would like it to go. But when you ruin the cover-up, then it becomes a bad deal for everyone.
It's an even worse deal. God, man.
That is actually fucking amazing. Those are the moments, in some ways, I think, when Trump is most on the table. When it's like, it's not even like, there are moments when he's actually being very affable, where he really lets you in on his thought process. All right, let's take one more call. You're calling from a Skype, I believe, 266. Are you there?
Michael, how's it going? This is John from Silicon Valley.
Hey, John. Good to hear from you. How you doing, man?
Yeah, glad to be back. Hey, you guys are doing amazing things. I really salute you. Although I must wonder if anyone has followed up on my suggestion to listen to the Firesign Theater yet. I suspect no.
No.
It's worth 10 minutes. Somebody, please check it out. Don't crush that dwarf. Hand me the pliers. Yeah, Firesign Theater. Okay. Firesign, like astrology. It's a very important chapter in late 60s, early 70s American satire and political thought and culture. It's really worth your listen.
All right, cool.
Anyway, I don't have any particular thing in mind. I just wanted to think, with election time just around the corner, I would encourage everybody to get out there and vote, unless you're half dead. And if you don't go vote, then please go die. But also, it's a great opportunity to try to engage with people, whoever you do or don't know them, and wherever they are in the political spectrum, and stick to your principles and open up discussion, and yet be understanding. Try to kind of put yourself in the other person's shoes. Like, here's a microcosm. This morning I was listening to a debate on Bay Area News Radio between the two candidates for a local state assembly seat. They're both, progressives, Javanka Beckles and Buffy Wicks, I think it is.
Javanka Beckles is the vote in that race. She's a hell of a lot better. She's a great candidate. I want to just say that. She's a really good candidate.
Okay, well, I have to say I listened to both of them. I don't know a whole lot. I just heard the debate mainly. I came away thinking they were both great candidates. I'm not sure what your critique
Javanka
is of
Beckles
the other
is
candidate,
a Bernie Sanders person, and the other candidate's a Hillary person, which on balance I'll go with the Bernie person. And Javanka also has she's a psychotherapist, I believe, and she also has a record on city. She has a record. She has a record on city. She has a record on city council of really delivering.
Yeah, no, it's very.
So she's a great candidate.
They're both quite. I agree. But listening to their rhetoric, for example, specifically about Medicare for all, Javanka Beckles came across as a straight ahead. We need to try to implement this on the state level as soon as possible. And Buffy Wicks came across with the more, I'm totally in favor of Medicare for all, but we're not going to get a federal waiver, so we won't in practice be able to do it at the state level. So we need to do incremental steps until 2020. And so on the one hand, I want to see it happen as soon as possible. On the other hand, I think there's some merit in the tactical thought of Buffy Wicks. So
yeah, but here's the question I have for you. Here's the question I have for you. You know that there's no doubt that Javanka Beckles will vote for every incremental measure that comes up in California. She's going to support those things. And and also what you know is that she has a much more robust and serious commitment to it than Buffy. So when I hear that, I think when I hear that, I think to myself, this is actually not what Buffy's making it about is not the point, because the reality is, like, yes, everybody knows there isn't going to be a magical waiver. Everybody knows that any bill you can get passed in the interim to increase health care coverage is good. But I also know that one person has staked their win on being a bullish fighter for single payer no matter what, and that's the most important thing, especially when it actually becomes a possibility.
I'll play devil. I'm not there. I can't vote for either one. They're not my district. But to be devil's advocate, another thing that impressed me about the Buffy Wicks rhetoric was that she was quite well informed and focused on how she would attempt to reform Prop 13, with famous, a bill out here that limits property tax increases for homeowners and businesses. And she is, very focused on that policy thing. So I mean, if I were going to vote for them, I'd look into it a whole lot more. But I guess to summarize, I came away thinking there were strong points on both sides, and I can see how different people, depending on their experience and points of view, will choose one or the other candidate. And so I am so glad that we live in a country where we can, number one, have real vote. People who got to vote in China for the one candidate, and it's sad. But that's even better than some other options. But, at the same time, you're not going to convince everybody to agree with you, yet it's so important and productive to engage with them in political discussion. And so that's the main thing I wanted to throw out there. I won't tie up the line.
I agree with you.
Let me just reiterate.
No, I agree. I just did some canvassing with my great friend Luke Mayville out in Idaho for Expand Medicaid campaign there, and few things compare going door to door and talking with real people. It's great, and I agree with you.
Oh, you tell me about it. I years ago I sold solar powered hot water heaters door to door in Sacramento. I can empathize.
Awesome.
But anyway, please listen to the Fireside Theater, because once you get into it, it's hilarious.
All right, I will check it out. I promise. Thanks for the call.
All right, thanks.
All right. Fire. What is it? Fire sign?
Fire signs. I'm looking at the Wikipedia. The last line on the intro is called the group the Beatles of Comedy.
All right.
That's a big
Check it out. That is a big thing.
The only person I know that stretches that far back is Harry Shearer, who's been doing a radio show since... maybe it's just the 80s, but yeah.
I think the 80s. Harry Shearer's funny.
He's great.
From teacher Lauren, just a quick mom update. She's not better, but she's improving in her words. Quote, instead of having bad days that get worse, I have good days that can get bad. She still has double vision, but at least it's getting clearer. Still fighting for disability, though. Well, thanks for keeping us updated, and let us know, keep us engaged in that. Appreciate that. And I was really amazed at what people came through. We'll do this again on Tuesday. Shout out to happy TM from TSBM family to Raul. And the reason I sighed is I apologize. I think I will probably mispronounce your last name, Raul. Raul Carrenza, a.k.a. Wheels. And please continue to support causes like Disability Rights California. I'll tweet this out later. I've tweeted it out once, but tomorrow or next Tuesday, maybe we'll try to remember to make that the shout-out segment. Disability Rights California. Raul is a great guy. Love chatting with him. And happy birthday, and thanks, everybody, for that support. Transylvania Express. Michael, should we be organizing to evacuate and shelter vulnerable Brazilians in light of Bolsonaro's incipient wind? I mean, we're not in a space in this country where we're we're deporting people. I don't see the mechanism for that, but I think, if it's possible, if you're in the position to help somebody, that's great. I honestly think in this specific case, I think there's a huge amount of value for people who are engaged in your circle in politics, debunking the many lies that have been told about the Workers' Party and Lula and corruption, and really explaining the origins and context for what's happening there. Because Bolsonaro, now when John Oliver and people like that report it, now it's, of course, they get it because they understand how horrible Bolsonaro is, but it's not going to be reported in the context of the backlash of U.S. corporations. It's not going to be reported in the context of a longstanding lawfare coup with support from U.S. and Western media, and it's also not going to tell you, the true nature of the Workers' Party and the incredible successes for real people of Lula's presidency. And I think being clear that he's a political prisoner, being clear of the factors that went into this is going to help a lot. And also, this is actually something that I would be, thanking Bernie and thanking other great progressives for talking about this. And I want to know, AOC. In fact, where is her, one of her great tweets about this? This needs to be at the top of the docket from any type of left foreign policy perspective, and we should build solidarity all the ways we can. And, I would definitely support. There are going to be a lot of Brazilians who are going to be even more. There's no doubt. I'm not questioning the merits of it. There is a huge refugee and human rights asylum cases. I'm just saying, look at who's in charge here and the racism and brutality of it, in terms of how that would move practically. But yeah. David, do you have something?
Yeah. You can reach out in many different ways. I was playing online chess like I do sometimes, and I came up against a Brazilian player, and I started sending some Lula Libre and
fuck yeah
different hashtags at them.
How did they respond?
Well, I was beating them pretty bad, so I don't know if they took it pretty well.
So basically, you just actually lost us a vote.
Yeah, I definitely.
Yeah.
Like a vote
what you
for
should do
Bolsonaro.
is you should antagonize Brazilians in online forums and associate your humiliating with them with Lula Libre. So as an example, say you cuck a Brazilian guy, send a picture with his girlfriend that you're dating now and do an L for Lula Libre and send it to him. Yeah, David, that's great. That's really smart advice.
Hey, I like, some people, they freak out when the chess.com, man.
I know that. I've seen it. I
have very normal interactions with people, and people just will say horrible things about you. It's your mother.
How much? Chess.com?
On chess.com.
Like how Matt's
like Fortnite or something.
Yeah, basically, right? How much money from the mods? How much is your check from Soros, Michael? Like so many of us, sadly none. We get nothing from the old bastard. Question from Joanna. Which, by the way, can we just remind ourselves that, like, in the same day that Chuck Schumer was like, I'm so sorry that people yelled at Mitch McConnell, I apologize, that they found a bomb in George Soros's mailbox, and that is going to affect Fox News, Republican politicians, Republican pundits from spreading lies and rumors about George Soros? Exactly none. So let that just be another little lesson there. Joanna, World Series. Who you got? How many wins and how many losses? I'm totally not following baseball at all this season, so I'll leave it to you guys.
My heart's with the Dodgers, but I think the Red Sox win in 6.
Okay, so not even that close.
I'm going to, with no education, go with the Dodgers.
I'm going to go with the Red Sox. They're pretty good. Okay. Let's see. Let's do another video. Let's do pain and pleasure. So this is Barack Obama. He's out on the stump, and as I always say, I'm glad Barack Obama's out on the stump, and the left should be looking for ways of harnessing Obama to our advantage, and finding. And I did a commentary on this several months ago about how to relate to Obama, and we need to somehow disaggregate being really clear about some of the extremely harmful aspects of his legacy, acknowledge areas where he was positive, and then also acknowledge just the broader social context of things like the racism and delegitimization of the fascist forces in this country that he faced. I will say, in my hobby, Barack Obama used to love kissing Lula's ass at international forums, and he would go, "That's the man right there, most popular politician in the world." And I have to say, the fact that he has not said a word in defense of Lula, which I would not expect from a neoliberal centrist, still seriously grinds my gear. So you know how like other people get pissed with Obama about things that they should be happy about? Like he comes out for single payer and they're like, it takes a lot. Fuck it, yeah. Versus being like, oh, that's awesome. The most popular politician in the country and former 2-term president and leader of the Democratic Party supports a great healthcare system.
Yeah,
now.
that's obstacle became an asset now.
That obstacle became an asset. I'm happy. Well, that obstacle is still not saying a fucking thing about his buddy who is the world's #1 political prisoner, and that annoys me. And this also annoys me because especially, and I will say this, because regardless of his politics, I mean, Barack Obama is a really, really smart guy, and I cannot believe that he's still in fucking 2018, weeks before we got to have a pivotal midterm election, that he's still saying shit this naive is actually genuinely shocking to me.
The threat to our democracy does not come from one person in the White House or Republicans in Congress or big money lobbyists. The biggest threat to our democracy is indifference. The biggest threat to our democracy is cynicism that says we're just going to stay home because my voice doesn't matter. But listen, I won states because 10 people extra in every precinct voted. I won that state because of that. The last election, it was probably the same number of people that could fit into a football stadium swayed the entire election. Don't tell me your vote doesn't matter. If you don't like what's going on right now, and you shouldn't, don't complain. Don't get anxious. Don't throw up your hands. Don't boo. Vote. And when you vote, not just for these candidates, but up and down the line for mayors and sheriffs and district attorneys, you have the power to make sure our voting rights are protected.
So look, the last part he's absolutely right about. Yes, vote. Vote across the line. Vote for Democrats. Vote for left Democrats over centrist Democrats where that's a choice. And vote for Democrats over Republicans where that's a choice. Really simple. You're not going to get any dumb shit from this show. But the idea, and on both angles, by the way, in 2018, because on one hand, I think we've gotten a lot more serious about the depth of things like misogyny and xenophobia in parts of the electorate and the oligarchies that feed those forces and the corruption that feeds those forces that, as Nancy MacLean outlines, literally works to put democracy in chains. And then conversely, other people's sense of desperation, including, by the way, most people inside the Democratic base. I'm not talking about reaching out to these mythical Trump voters. I'm talking about people who have voted for Democrats, people who do, who might be a woman of color, as an example, who are still structurally disfavored by the economy and abused by the economy, feeling a lack of hope and a cynicism and indifference. No. Those are material conditions created by Wall Street, by Silicon Valley, by fascistic and anti-democratic and libertarian ideology. Those are the main threats to democracy. And go vote.
It's so frustrating sometimes to listen to Democrats and their strategy going into this like very important election, which has been so far from anything about like inspiration or coming out in policies and trying to say like we need to win, this is a future that we can create. It's all has just been vote shaming, right? Attacking people for their apathy, which is a result of failed political activities of the Democratic Party for the past 20 years. It's never an internal critique of like, why are we not winning elections? It's always, it's vote shaming. And then it's Trump's an idiot, Trump's an orange Cheeto. And it's so frustrating to watch it, because this is just such a softball election. And I'm becoming less and less confident that it's going to be as overwhelming of blue wave. And you see it, we're coming up a few weeks from it. And like, that's the message right now, is just saying that like, these messages that, most Americans do understand that corporate lobbyists have too much power.
Right.
Most people in America do understand that wealthy donors have incredible influence over politicians' actions. The point is not to tell them, hey, that doesn't matter. The point is to say, we're against that and we want to change that. But certainly some characters can't make that argument clearly, and it's a huge problem. It puts us at a serious deficit if that's the opposition to absolute fascism and immorality and barbarity that we're seeing from the Republicans.
Yeah, I agree.
I listened to The Discourse. Shout out Sutton, Benjamin Sutton. What's he going by?
I was just on Brendan Sutton, Pretty Bad Lefty. I was just on 2 episodes ago. I'm also a patron. The Discourse is an excellent show, and Griscom's been a guest on The Discourse. Discourse is great. Brendan's going to be on this show again sometime in the near future.
They did a takedown of the Pod Save America boys, and not that we haven't talked about that too, but
right.
It really is. One of the guys called it Barney for adults. Like,
have you ever watched The West Wing?
Well,
just like something like when they come together, like
apparently Ben Rhodes literally said that. Like they watched The West Wing to prepare, and but one of the guys said it's Barney for adults, which it is, yes, right? Like it's like there's fascism going on. Give me the Barney version. That's not really gonna unsettle me that much.
Right. Exactly. And what's amazing, and Luke Savage pointed this out. I haven't watched much of that show, but I've watched a bit, and Luke Savage said like that show is actually is basically often about losing.
Oh, the West
and compromising.
It's all about compromising.
It's all about compromising and losing, and then the bad people, it's not ideological. It's that they're cynical or something or other. And there's all these scenes with, I'm a right-wing Republican who do, but bad golly, Mr. President, blah, blah, blah. And yes, it was an embarrassing fantasy in times that people perceived to be safe and comfortable, which they weren't. And in these times, it is the equivalent of, you know what? If you're a fan of The West Wing, not like whatever, you watch whatever you want to watch, but if you're like if you're like, we need to watch The West Wing, and you're a critic of safe spaces in college campuses,
oh yeah,
self-assess.
The best part of The West Wing, though, if you I don't know how many people who are listening have watched it, but if you watch the show, this is like the liberal fantasy administration, and obviously it's a fictional show,
and so they don't get anything done.
They don't do anything. Their big accomplishment at the end is like a serious attempt to privatize Social Security.
They try to privatize Social Security. And they also go and mock and I did watch this episode. There is a fucking episode where the guy who's like the like the senior speechwriter who's like I'm like a New York Jewish tough guy, no bullshit, but secretly like I have a heart of gold and I'm like actually the most idealistic liberal, is sent in as an emissary to go meet with anti-globalization protesters. And they are depicted like, just to the T of
deplorables.
Just dumb outfits, shouting silly slogans about sea turtles, right, or whatever. It just, just look like total. They don't. Unlike all of like the arch reactionary Christians on the show, it does not come down on their side, but there's a lot of room made for like, we disagree, but you got to respect these people. These people are just depicted as idiots, right? And he sits there, and they're so disorganized. Actually, I have seen this on the left, to be fair, but they're so disorganized that they can't even come to a consensus process of how to ask him questions, which is, to be fair, that was kind of funny.
I mean, that's definitely
right?
occupied.
And so he's sitting there reading a newspaper, ignoring them, and he's like, they didn't want cameras in the meeting, so I can just like blow them off. And then the woman who is doing security for the event, but is not a cop and not part of his, like any detail. She's literally like, a security guard in the building. She's depicted to be like salt of the earth, blue collar worker. She's the one who talks him into sincerely explaining the benefits of trade. She's like, they're going to keep yelling and think you're a jerk if you don't explain it to them. So
ideas.
She's literally it's a Thomas Friedman column. I mean, it's just that show is just irredeemably stupid. It's amazing.
But but that's the thing. It's like, we don't talk about these things enough. But like, that's like the ideological like fantasy of a certain kind of politics. Very much so, like of the Pod Save America people. Yep. And it's just such a wrong way to look at politics or this moment. It's to think that
it's a dangerous way to look at this moment.
That so obviously, if people were voting a certain way, if people were not voting for Trump and like other candidates win, that will change things. But to think that the solution to that is just to tell people vote, that you're going to create those conditions is complete nonsense.
Yeah,
it's incredible that these guys now have an HBO show. I have not had the heart to watch, but I've heard.
I can't even listen to it I used to do the impression, which people liked, but I just can't. And it's funny because it's not even like. Sometimes the content is good, even from just the perspective of like, it's interesting when they do like literally we were in this office and this is how this bureaucracy works. But it's just so the fusion of how totally boring and reasonable it is in a certain way. And then the fact that it's contextualized in a state of pure fantasy and disconnection from reality is terrifying. Like that's what
it's Fox News for liberals.
Well, it's like it's really triggering for me, because I lived in DC for 6 years, right. And I fled because I was tired of the lanyard people, and like Pod Save America is like that group of people distilled, as a national product, and I really, it just gives me nightmares to even see advertisements for it on the train nowadays.
Jesus Christ. All right, let's do one. We got a final piece of sound, and then we'll do a few more things and get out of here. But let's just do this incredibly important race in Florida. You got to vote in Florida. You also got to vote for Bill Nelson. He needs to beat Rick Scott. There's a good example of an extremely uninspiring, mediocre Democrat. You need to beat Rick Scott.
That is the thing where my North Dakota voting habits sort of still exist. Like, if I had the opportunity to vote against Rick Scott, and I'm not saying that this is sufficient for the Democrats to run, right, obviously, given our last conversation. I'm just saying, me personally,
I'd be stoked.
I would walk like 25 miles in North Dakota weather to vote against Rick fucking Scott.
Yeah, we don't have time to get into him, but look him up. Rick Scott, even in today's world.
Look up Rick Scott, Starbucks.
And Rick Scott, Medicaid fraud. And even in today's world, he's still one of the most disgusting politicians in America. And Ron DeSantis, even in today's world, is one of the most disgusting politicians in America. Here he is getting sunned by Andrew Gillum.
Because my mother and father would have to get up so early in the morning to go to work, they would load us all into a car, drive us over to my grandmother's house where she would have a ritual and do two things before she'd let us cross the threshold of the door. She'd take her bottle of olive oil, also known as blessing oil, and build a cross on my forehead as a way to send us out into the day with a blessing and a covering. And then she would have this mantra where she'd say, go to school, mind your teachers, get your lesson, and one day bring that education home. She'd say, bring it home for your mama, for your daddy, who get out there and work on somebody else's job. Bring it home for your little brother and your little sister. What my grandmother was communicating to me was that it wasn't just about me. It's about all of us. And in Trump's America, we've been led to believe that we've got to step on our neighbor's shoulder in their face and their backs in order to get ahead. Well, I reject that. And we have an opportunity on November 6th as a collective, as a state, to say we deserve better. We want better. We want better schools, access to health care, a clean economy, a restorative justice system that works where hand in glove, the community and law enforcement work together for all of our benefit. I'm asking you all for the only thing in life that my mother ever told me to ask for, and that's a chance. I want to be your governor. Let's bring it home.
And there's huge stakes there, particularly on voting rights and climate policy, as well as Medicaid expansion and so on. David Slavic, I guess, just sent this thing. I don't know anything about this gritty thing, but I guess it's gritty memes. And gritty's a Philly sports thing that's become socialist. I don't know anything about this. Do you guys know?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's play this. This is to the Always Sunny in Philadelphia soundtrack, and David Slavic is a fan. Let's see. Wait, I
don't know if this is gonna work.
There's no music?
Yeah, there's no music. It's just some memes.
All right, cool. I like gritty punching Hitler. That's awesome. Shut the fuck up, fascists. The revolution will be gritty. That's good. All right.
What Griscom, you know theory better than I do. What theorist would have the most to say about the appropriation of gritty for leftist propaganda purposes?
Oh, I mean,
I'm saying gotta be Zizek, right?
Oh, that's actually probably better. I was going to say Adorno, but he would be absolutely frightened by the prospect.
I was thinking,
but I don't know. I'd be curious to see what Zizek would have to say about it because.
Would Gramsci have anything to say?
But here's the thing: is like I don't know. I'm not trying to poo-poo on gritty, but like I don't care enough about it. But like if you do take it from a kind of theoretical perspective, it's like okay, so it's like this kind of bizarre-looking weirdo, not representative of a collective, a very unique character who looks like a maniac.
Yes,
it's an outcast. Is that really like the representative of like the community and
it's still
and like the socialist revolution? I mean, it's very much counterculture and it's very individualist.
I agree.
But I don't know. I do like the crazy eyes.
Well, I like him beating up on Pepe. That's cool. All right, it's
but also there's a lot of young people and a lot of young lefties in Philly, which I think, and also in Philly, from what I've seen, this is just like complete armchair theoretician here, right?
Fuck. No, now Teacher Lauren says now we need to bombard Michael with gritty memes. Okay, we need to stop this conversation.
I think it's the only. I think it's the only left wing community that actually it's like cool to root for your home team sports. Like it's very much like on the left. It always seems like I always feel a little guilty when I start posting Texas stuff. I don't feel like Yankees fans.
See, I think we need to start engaging in culture like this.
Oh, I agree.
I
agree with that. Oh, I like that. All right, you know what? This is cool. I'm okay with it. I'm pro gritty.
Take your cultural victories where you can get them.
You can just convince me, Matt. Let's see. Question from attorney Andrew. We've recently seen a bunch of pieces on the quote-unquote various meanings of Medicare for all, most recently in the New York Times. Chris Hayes just had an interview with Abdul El-Sayed based on the premise that the devil's in the details of Medicare for all. Few of these pieces or Hayes' podcasts acknowledge the bills in Congress with over 100 co-sponsors. As a political strategy, should the response to these sorts of attacks be to emphasize what the principles single payer should be abide by, or should we already refer to existing bills in Congress? I would say, to be honest, besides the Abdullah El-Sayed has to do a different thing because he was running for governor of Michigan, and he actually put together a serious plan for Michigan, and of course he would have been a great governor. That's another hugely important race, by the way, out there to vote for Christian Whitmire. But I actually think in general, pieces that are coming out and the agenda to undermine how clear that policy is, I would say you should refer back to it because it's ridiculous how that's covered. The Bernie bill alone in the Senate is actually a very thoroughly written and serious bill that actually does that job. And writing about it as if this is ambiguous or vague is it's lazy and dishonest. All right. Final call tonight. You're calling from a Skype. Are you there? 518.
Definitely not me.
518.
Hey, can you hear me?
Okay, yes, we can hear you. Dave from Jamaica, how are you?
Fine. You threw me off with the Skype.
Oh, I thought it was. I misread it.
I'm going to become a patron of the Literary Hangover, so I'm looking forward to that. So probably
Matt,
after
you didn't
the show.
have the board up for
I
you.
appreciate it.
May not be for long job issues. So that brings me to the
I'll
topic.
take whatever.
Hey. Don't worry, you'll get something out of it. So,
Yo, what you got in your pocket right now?
What, $20?
All right, Dave.
So,
what's on your mind, brother?
Jokes aside, yeah. So Musk.
Oh, Jesus.
We said jokes aside, Dave.
I don't have any. No, oh, you're right. You're right. Good point. So jokes in.
He's a vanquished enemy at this point, almost. It's kind of amazing.
Right.
When I started on Elon Musk several months ago, he's in a very different place. Yeah. All right, go ahead, man.
I was encouraging you to do some more dunking because, like, of my current job situation, it kind of brought that to mind. The overpraising of basically bad managers. I mean,
I see. Yeah.
Can you tell me what has Musk really done?
He co-founded PayPal.
His staff really does.
I mean, look. Sorry,
I didn't hear you.
Well, he co-founded PayPal. There's two things that I would say in this that are. One is a macro philosophical difference, and look, nothing is black or white. There are some people, like Steve Jobs was an evil motherfucker who did a lot of really horrible shit. And I think at the same time, he probably slightly more fits some of the molds of this mythology. He was a very talented guy who, including by doing some really horrible things, many really horrible things, structurally horrible things, was able to do something that was distinct, whatever. But in general, I'm not interested in the person at the top of the company. I'm interested in the process that makes the company. So in general, I'm just not interested in that sort of mythology. And secondly, I don't think that
dunk on him. That's all.
I don't think that Elon Musk. I mean, I get Tesla. That's a thing that he and his engineers did. That's actually real.
Yeah, and the rockets coming up and down looks cool too. Like my point is always that, like, it might be interesting to figure out what exactly is, novel about Elon Musk's mind and the way he approaches things. But I got to say, like, American culture is going to do that job. So our job is to point out how glorifying the individual capitalist misses out a lot of how things are actually done in the world.
Exactly.
I think in a lot of ways too, Elon Musk is very similar to Donald Trump in that he's really been able to, he's a really good self-promoter. I don't know if anyone saw, he tweeted out today that he loves anime. And if you go through if you go through his responses, they're very funny, but there was an incredible amount of people, asking Elon Musk. It's like, will Elon Musk make the anime girl real? Will Elon Musk be able to make like the cat eye girl real, through science?
God.
My God.
And it's because, and obviously it's absolutely absurd, but only Elon Musk has cultivated this idea that, he's the one who's able to bring these scientific ideas into production and reality, even though he hasn't really done that with anything.
Right. Yeah, he made a souped-up car.
He's Jeff Flake for engineers.
Boom. Dave, thank you. Talk to you soon. Love you, buddy. Final call of the night. 760 area code right under the wire. We have to run in a second. 760, are you there?
Hey, Michael. It's your buddy, Kentucky Fried Comrade.
How are you? Good to hear you. What's on your mind, brother?
So I only called in because of the guy. I was like really promising to not call in, but the guy who had the Buffy Wicks versus Jovanka Beckles conversation.
Yes.
That's California politics. That's my wheelhouse.
Yes, sir.
Gotta say a quick word on it.
Jovanka Beckles all the way.
Just to remind everybody, California is a top 2 primary system. So it is a Democrat running against a Democrat. There's no like risk here of it falling to a Republican seat.
Right.
The area being discussed is Berkeley, Oakland, and Richmond, which are very, very high population people of color districts.
Right.
There's a history in California of white liberals, and I'm just going to be blunt about it, white liberals fucking over people of color. Jovanka Beckles not only is great politically, has great endorsements, has literally everything any progressive should want running for her, and experience being a legislator as a city councilwoman.
Yep.
She meets any benchmark, and she's
an absolute. I mean, nothing. You know, I love the great call earlier. I was happy, but I mean, that's one of the most. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with both you guys on. I don't know that I haven't heard of this.
She's one of the only politicians in the country I'm interested in interviewing.
Okay, yeah,
she's good. Yes.
Shit, now
and the only people supporting her, and the only
sorry.
reason this conversation is happening is literally because David Axelrod is concerned trolling on Twitter about it. But anyway, have a good night, guys.
Jesus.
Love you all.
Love you back.
Yeah, I think what our earlier caller got was sort of like a exhilaration of what politics could look like if there was no Republican Party.
Yes. No, I think that's true. I think that's absolutely right, and in a way less exhilarating way. I remember a German telling me once they saw Bernie and Hillary Clinton debate, and they were like, "You have a perfectly good social democratic candidate, and you have a perfectly good Christian Democrat center right candidate. Why do you need any other party?"
Yep.
I think that's it. Let me see. There might be a final IM. Okay. Is there an IM I'm missing?
By the way, 3-3 in the 5th for the World Series.
Oh, I want to watch some of the series. At some point, James Darwin, at some point I'd love a deep dive on Brazil tying integralismo to both the dictatorship and Bolsonaro, if those links exist. I'll look into it. Thanks, everybody. Sunday, we return, and of course, Woke Bros is in the pipeline.